Hey guys, what's going on? Today we are going to talk about 3 of my favorite technical activities to do with larger groups. So let's go. So I get tons of emails asking for this specific topic where they'll say, hey, Rory, we really like some of the stuff that you show, but do you have any advice on what to do for a larger group and specifically what to do to increase technical abilities? Now, you guys already know I'm a big fan of the Belgian box, and I have a separate video on that if you want to check that out. But sometimes you want something a little bit more free-flowing, and maybe you've got 20 kids there. And if you do that, you really have to set up 2 Belgian boxes, and it can be hard to coach unless they've done it before. But for me, these are the kind of the 3 activities that I go to when I have a larger group and I'm looking to do technical work. Just a side note, there is certainly some debate on what is, quote, technical work, because a lot of the stuff that I advocate, the battle boxes, the rondos, I would actually argue that is technical work. But really, when I'm speaking about technical work here, I'm talking about specifically ball control, one player, one ball, ball manipulation, stuff like that. This is sometimes known as 2 players and 1 ball. It's a very simple setup, but the skills can range from very basic receiving and passing to juggling, heading, chesting the ball, and it provides a really nice activity for tons of touches. And guys, for every one of these, I'm going to show specific examples of what I'm doing, as well as diagrams on the tactical pad so you guys can get it. Here's a setup for about 20 players, and you can see they're side by side about 5 to 6 yards apart with the ball to the player closest to the goal line. Here we're using half of a field, but this activity can be done in smaller spaces. Here's just a visualization of what this looks like in practice. You can see the players are getting set up, trying to put about 5 to 6 yards in between them, and then you really want to encourage them to spread all the way across the goal line. Now, there are a variety of different technical aspects you can do with these Brazilians, and I'm just going to show you kind of what a basic format would be using 4 or 5 techniques. But you can get really complex with this, especially if you've got an older team or a really technical team. So the first exercise I usually do is one-touch passing. So they'll start with 25 or 50 one-touch passes between the pairs. I typically ask, especially if it's a younger team, for them to use the inside part of the foot, but certainly if you have an older team or a team that's more skilled, you don't necessarily have to put that restriction on them. Once they've reached 25 or 50 passes, whatever the number is, the line further into the field starts backpedaling. It's critical here that the player who is backpedaling check his shoulder, and then the player who is going forward play a strong pass into his feet where the player backpedaling just traps it and leaves it in front of him. You really have to encourage them to keep that 5 to 6 yard distance in between as they go, and for the player playing the ball into the backpedaling player's feet to really hit it with force so they can trap it at their feet. Once this reaches the half line, they repeat themselves where they go 25 or 51 touches and they start moving back now towards the goal line where that group of players now will backpedal and trap the ball. So guys, this gets us back to where we started with the one touches, and you can go in a couple different directions, but at this point, I typically go with volleys. So they stand again side by side, right 5 to 6 yards next to each other. The person on the goal line has the ball and is the server. It's really important that the server puts the ball at the player's knee who is volleying it, okay? And I usually tell them it's a granny toss or an underhand toss to the knee. It shouldn't be a toss that's super high in the air, really just a small, short granny toss to the knee to help them volley it over. In terms of coaching points, you're going to try to tell them that they're taking their inside part of the foot and they're using their foot as if they were going to close a door. So if you're going to turn a door with your foot, you're going to turn your hips in that direction the same way you would closing a door with your foot. I typically do 10 on the left foot, 10 on the right foot, and then we start moving in the same direction towards the half line that we did with our one touches. Again, they should be maintaining the 5 to 6 yard distance. And as the player's backpedaling, he checks his shoulder quickly and then volleys it back to his partner. This is then repeated at the half line with the player who was serving. They've now switched. They go 10 left, 10 right. And again, backpedaling down, checking their shoulder back to the goal line. The next progression is thigh to foot volleys. So the server plays a direct ball to the player's hip. They use their thigh to control it and bring it down to their foot and then volley it back to the server. We do 10 left, 10 right, and then it's the same progression where you backpedal, checking your shoulder, doing that move, playing it back to the server. Once again, when they get to the halfway line, the roles switch and 10 left, 10 right, and they again start backpedaling back to the goal line. The next progression that I typically do after those two volleys is chest. So here the toss is a granny toss to the face. So where it's not a very hard throw to the face, it sort of gets to the face and it starts to drop down. Now the technique for when and how you receive a ball in your chest, I tell my players, think about it like you're holding a piece of paper in front of you and you rip the paper, keeping your arms as close to your body as possible. Okay, they have a tendency to have their arms flare out wide, and that's where you get into handball situations where you chest the ball and it goes off your hand. As long as you keep it high and tight, which is hard to do, especially for young players, that usually doesn't happen. They're using their chest to bring the ball to their feet to volley it over to the server. We do 10 of those, and then again, it's the same progression where you backpedal to the half line, and then the roles reverse, and they go 10 chest volleys, and they come back to the goal line. So the last thing that we did with the example group that I'm showing you guys is after the one touches and then the regular volleys, thigh to foot volleys and chest to foot volleys, we then went on to headers. Now, this is a U11 group, so they're just learning how to actually do a header. And we used something called a header ball. I got these from the Training Triangle, but I know there are other brands, and basically it's just a lighter ball so they can really focus on the technique without any injury situation or, concerns for head injury or concussion. So it starts with just the basic technique with them on their knees. So this is really trying to get them to isolate the posterior neck muscles and focus on hitting the ball with their forehead. We usually do 5 or so of these and then have them stand up. Server here, again, is important. This should be a ball to their head. Okay, not a ball way up in the air just yet, but a ball to their head, both when they're on their knees and then when they're standing. Now, when they're standing, I typically tell them to put their dominant foot behind them. Okay, the position of the hands is the same as in the chest. So again, it's just like ripping the paper, and then you're going to take the back of your neck, pushing it forward and trying to place the ball onto the forehead. We do about 5 or so of those, switching between the two partners. And then lastly, we do balls in the air. So this time the server will actually throw the ball high up in the air. Now it's important that they put it high in the air, but not over their head. Okay, this focuses the player on timing of the ball. Okay, when do I have to leave my feet in order to get it on my head? Again, we typically do 5 or 10 of those, and we're done with Brazilians. So the Ronaldinho drill can be done with a larger group, or it can be done with an individual player. Oftentimes, I will give assignments out like this to players saying, hey, listen, do 10 minutes of Ronaldinho and juggling, as I like to split them. So the setup is really simple. It is you take a bunch of cones and you kind of put them in the middle of your area. Here's a tactical pad view of what this setup would look like, and I usually split the group. So if this is 20 players, 10 would be in the middle here with all the cones, and 10 would be on the outside. Now, again, these don't even have to be cones. When I tell my players at home, these could be toys. They could be almost anything. Cups, plastic cups is a great thing to use. But you're going to want to put a lot of things in the middle. Now, at the younger ages, sometimes they'll call this minefield. But really, the key to this drill is lots of small touches in tight spaces. So what you have is a rotation of every, let's say, 30 to 45 seconds where the middle group will be dribbling kind of as fast as they can in the middle of the cones, taking lots of small touches, getting their head up, using multiple parts of the foot. And the group on the outside will do juggling. Now, I normally make it a competition to see who can do the most juggles, okay? And then you end up switching the groups. I like to do 3 to 4 cycles of this as it does expend a lot of energy, but they'll just switch back and forth between the juggling group and the group inside the Ronaldinho. Coaching points here are getting your head up, using every part of the foot, using turns, feints, making sure that you keep the ball as close as possible, as well as not running into the other players and using, the ball in tight spaces. So the last technical drill that I tend to do in larger groups is called the eagle. And really it's just named that way. Some people call it the bird because the way that the cones are set up, it looks like two wings. And this drill is really good for changes of direction. So you're talking about moves like L turns, feints, outside cut turns, chops. There's a ton of different types of techniques you can use within this particular drill, but it's really helpful in terms of changing direction with the ball at your feet. Here's just the tactical pad overview. You have the setup of the cones here in that wing-like formation. You also have 4 separate, here I have them as blue cones on the outside. So you'll start with 4 players at those blue cones without a ball. Everyone else has a ball and is in one of these 2 lines. Each player will dribble through these 3 gates doing a particular move that we designate. This is done in a zigzag pattern. Once they've completed this, they play the ball to the closest blue cone, who then plays the ball to the bottom blue cone and follows their pass. The player at the bottom blue cone then joins the line on the opposite side of where they are. This is, in essence, a dribbling circuit where players work on moves, especially changes of direction. So, like I said, we do outside cut turns, we do L turns, we do feints, we do scissors. There are so many different activities that you can do within these 3 gates, and it really kind of changes things up a little bit. And you'll see it's a large group, but once it gets going, kids are pretty much not standing in line for very long, because that's certainly one of the criticisms with line building drills is that people are standing too long, but that's really not the case. You can see there's tons of movement, and we'll do this for 2-3 minutes, change the activity, and move on. Hey guys, let me know in the comments what you think about these 3 drills. Let me know if you've used them before, if you have other suggestions for technical activities to do with larger groups. Other than that, I really hope you liked the video and see you on the next one.